So today we're going to talk about Chapter 6, Research. So I want you to remember that for the informative and persuasive presentation, you will be required to incorporate research into those presentations, at least 4 outside sources. You'll be required to cite all of those sources and any more that you choose to use. So the key concepts of this chapter is becoming an expert, researching responsibly, utilizing a broad range of resources, mastering online keyword searches, evaluating and citing sources. So if you start and you look in your book or your text on Mind tab, it goes over some information that I'd like us to look at. In becoming an expert, it talks about the vaccine autism scare. And we've all heard we've all heard people say that there could potentially be a link between childhood vaccinations and autism. And when you look at this information, it's on page 107 in Chapter 6 of your textbook. It gives a little background on where this came from. It says that in 1998, a prestigious British medical journal, The Lancet, published a study claiming a link between autism and childhood vaccinations for measles, mumps, and rubella. These findings were widely publicized, and a movement against the vaccination emerged in both Great Britain and the United States. In Britain, before the study, 92% of children were vaccinated, and after that study, about 12%, there was a decline by 12%, and about the same in the United States. In Great Britain, the number of cases of measles rose from 58 in 98 to 1,348 in 2008, and the numbers were about the same in the United States. Yet it turns out that the study reported in The Lancet was based on flawed evidence, with a number of good reasons to question its claims. For example, although there has been a significant increase in diagnosed autism in the last few decades, there has been only a slight increase in MMR vaccinations. Children who aren't vaccinated have a similar risk for acquiring autism as children who are vaccinated. Moreover, the increase in autism didn't start at the same time as the introduction of the MMR vaccination. So, what does a study about bad laboratory research have to do with your research that you're going to be incorporating into your public speeches? The same thing. As you gather research for your presentations, the conclusions that you draw from the research that you've gathered has an impact. So it's important that you develop strong arguments from using your sources. And the way that you develop quality arguments makes an impact on your audience and what they think about your topic. The sources you use, the ideas and the arguments that the speakers use to justify their position in public has public implications, guiding the way that your audience thinks about the problem that you presented to them. The question to keep asking yourself is whether the research you present in your speech will help your audience members make better choices, perhaps changing their habits, their votes, or the way that they think about the world. When you cite bad research, you can perpetuate dangerous myths, and you might cause your audience to jump to unsafe conclusions. You have the choice and the responsibility to make sure that the conclusions you come to in your speech are well-founded and supported by high-quality research. I've listened to speeches many times where I know that the conclusions they're drawing are not accurate, that they're using flawed evidence in supporting their ideas. Now, I do know that there's a lot of people that do believe that there's a link between autism and vaccinations. And I do know that that 1998 study has drawn a lot of support. But it would be scary to think that that has come from a flawed report that someone made public before they truly had all of the evidence. So it is important that when you're presenting any information to the public, that you research it responsibly, that you make sure that you have all of the right information and that you're drawing the proper conclusions using the information that you have. So what is the research process? You have to figure out what you already know. So think about what is your opinion or your background knowledge on the topic. What is the basis of your opinion? So where did you come to in that opinion? And for some of us, it may be, I really don't know. I've just always thought this, or my parents thought this, or I know I heard it somewhere. What are other objections to our opinion? I believe this. What do I know other people feel against this? So what are the counter arguments to the opinion that we have? It's always important to know what other people feel against it, and that way we can develop the very best presentation that we can, that can possibly be beefed up so that we know that it is already answering those counter arguments. If you have someone in your audience that disagrees with you and you're answering those questions that they're debating you in their head, that is a very well developed presentation. So you design a research strategy. Think about, where are you going to look for your information? How are you going to look for your information? What are you expecting to find? And utilize your library and utilize your librarians. So where do you go? Of course, most students always strictly go to the electronics. You go to search engines, you go to databases. There is a very good research database within MindTap that I recommend that you're using. There's also a lot of databases that the library at Navarro College pays for students to use. So always try those databases that are beyond just using the internet. And that's something that the college pays for you to use as a student. And it's high quality research. You also can use print. You access a lot of this from the Navarro College Library. You can use journals, books, newspapers. And for some topics, you may use interviews or conversations. Now, this will not count as one of your 4 sources. An interview or conversation does not count for that. So conducting online search. Make sure to create a concise and effective search terms. What I always encourage is that before you search online, if possible, know your 3 main points prior to doing a search. And that way you're searching for each main point instead of a broad search. The more concise you can be in your search, the better. The more specific you are for the one thing that you're looking for, the better. Use synonyms and subtopics. Use the general search to locate sites, and narrow the focus to manage the volume of material. Gathering information and organizing source material. This is something that a lot of students make mistakes on because they don't think about their works cited page until basically they've turned in their speech, and I remind them they have to have a works cited page, and then they don't have the information that they need. You're going to have a works cited page for every source that you use in your speech. This is the type of information you're going to need for your works cited page. You're going to need a title, the author, the journal, the publication date, the web address, the page range, if it's a text, if it's a book especially, or journal article. So these are the things you need to keep up with as you find your sources. As you read, make sure to take effective notes to keep up with information that you can. Journals, it's always good to read the abstract, it's the kind of the summary of the article. News, read the first few paragraphs to find out if it's something that you're needing. Books, read the preface or the table of contents. Blogs, there's really no standard format, but I don't recommend using blogs anyway. So this is kind of an example that your book provides you, and your book kind of gives you a little bit more detail if you'll look at that on taking notes as you go to see what you want to use in your sources. This is on page 119 of your book. So you gives your source information. This is the quote I want to use in my speech, and it gives you kind of a tagline of maybe where you want to put it in your information. I think that can be very helpful. Evaluating materials. Make sure you have relevant arguments that support your point. Background information that you might want to use that creates a context. You're also looking for facts or statistics or data or quotes from notable sources that lend your credibility. This is the type of information that you're looking for. You're looking for a little bit of all of these to balance out your presentation. So always consider the source. A blog I would treat with skepticism. In fact, I wouldn't use a blog at all. News articles, determine if there's a bias within that. An advocacy piece, There's probably a lot of bias within an advocacy piece. Make sure there's a qualification there. Peer-reviewed articles cite accurately. Wikis question accuracy and sources. Don't use anything from Wikipedia. Websites evaluate objectivity and expertise. Make sure you know where the website's connected with. Is it a legitimate source? So review your claim. Review the material thoroughly. Reevaluate your argument. Revise your premise if warranted. So make sure that you're drawing the proper conclusion based on the information that's provided to you. Make sure that you are reading it correctly and that the conclusion you've drawn based on the information that you have is accurate. So choosing and citing sources, make an outline, evaluate the evidence for the purpose, the fact, or the quality, and avoid plagiarism by citing all of your sources. So, use a broad range of sources. When possible, use a journal article, newspaper, book, web source. Support your claim with research. Evaluate sources carefully. Always give credit by citing sources. And integrity always matters.